All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining us for this important conversation, and welcome to this MindSite News Live. My name is Tiffany Raether, and I'm here on with the team at MindSite News. Today, we present a special event on youth mental health. MindSite News editor Rob Waters and Dr. Neha Chaudhary, a child and adolescent psychiatrist at the Massachusetts General Hospital, will be in conversation with members of the Youth Advisory Board of Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation. Neha is also a member of the MindSite News Advisory Board team and the Chief Medical Officer of BeMe Health, a mobile mental health platform for teens. We're doing these conversations to stimulate conversation and the exchange of ideas and to introduce ourselves to a wider audience. At the top of our website, mindsitenews.org, you can sign up to subscribe to our newsletters and donate. We'll place the links for those in the Zoom chat a few times during the course of the conversation. And now let's get to the conversation. I'll hand it over to Rob and Neha.
Thanks, Tiffany, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And hi, Neha.
Hi, Rob, and welcome everybody. I'm so excited for this conversation because I think Born This Way Foundation is doing some fantastic work in mental health, and I'm eager to meet some of the youth advisors who are on today. And later, we're also going to bring in some recorded questions from members of the BeMe Teen Advisory Board. So we have a really great program, and let's go ahead and introduce our panelists.
Great. All right. First, I have the honor of introducing Adia F. She's a 20-year-old mental health and suicide prevention advocate from Los Angeles. Raise your hand, Adia. Her passion for eradicating the stigma surrounding mental health and suicidality began during her work in high school at Teen Line as a hotline listener, outreach presenter, and intern. She volunteers at D.D. Hirsch Suicide Prevention Center as a crisis counselor for 988 Crisis and Suicide Lifeline, and is a full-time undergrad student pursuing a degree in psychology at Point Loma Nazarene University.
Next, we have Mira V. Mira is a mental health activist from LA. Her struggles with mental health cast a shadow over her experiences as a teenager and were compounded by the shame that she faced when seeking treatment as an Asian Indian woman. These experiences fueled her passion for activism starting at age 14. Mira's work focuses on mental health education, suicide awareness and prevention, and mental health policy. She's invited by the Biden administration to discuss the disparities in our nation's mental health care system. Mira has also spoken at mental health panels and conferences to share her story and to propose new initiatives in mental health policy. Currently, she's a grad student at UCLA studying mental health and public health.
And Rahul R. is from India, where he works as a medical practitioner. He describes himself as an overthinker by force and a musician by passion, and he believes in healing through kindness. He wants to build a world where kindness is palpable, love is embraceable, and acceptance is breathtaking. A world where open and honest discussions will help alleviate anxiety and where people come together to celebrate love and identity. A world where bravery highlights the importance of community and togetherness. Welcome, Rahul.
And finally, Mariah Karras is a program associate for Born This Way Foundation, where she assists with Channel Kindness, Please Stay, and other programs. Previously, she worked for the Missoula Children's Theater, traveling the US and the world, teaching musical theater. A recent University of Montana graduate, Mariah launched a small business, The Giddy Thrifter, in 2021, and went on to place in 3 collegiate venture capital pitch contests. Originally from small town Wisconsin, Mariah is passionate about the arts, about female entrepreneurship, and creating a world where kindness and mental health awareness is at the heart of everything. Mariah, let's start with a little bit of background. What does Born This Way Foundation do? And also, how does the Youth Advisory Board contribute?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for having us. We are so excited to be here. So Born This Way Foundation was created by Lady Gaga and her mother, Cynthia Germanata, around 3 sort of major goals. That is making kindness cool, validating the emotions of young people, and eliminating the stigma surrounding mental health. So we do all of this through high impact programming and youth-led conversations, which is exactly where the advisory board comes into the picture. So the advisory board is made up of 31 young people from around the world who are making a change and using their voices to try to create a younger and kinder world. And these are young people who all have, different passions that sometimes branch off a little bit of mental health into other social issues like, climate change, disability equity, LGBTQIA plus rights, and so many other amazingly important topics to young people. And the advisory board helps us in so many different facets of our organization. So they serve as ambassadors of Born This Way Foundation and the work online and also in their communities. They share their experiences on Channel Kindness, which is our youth storytelling digital platform. And these are all stories about kindness, resilience, and community, and really push people to take intentional kind action and support themselves and others. And the ad board also helps us brainstorm ideas, test programs, assist in launching initiatives, and really continue to help us understand what is happening right now in the minds of young people and really what is most important to them.
That's super helpful to know. So what you're saying is if we want to make kindness cool, we need to involve young people, right? No offense taken to myself or Rob.
Absolutely, right? We want to not just say young people, we want to talk to them and hear what they're thinking and wanting and wishing.
Amazing. Well, I also know Mariah, Born This Way has a new initiative, Be Kind 365. Can you share a little bit about that and the research also that underlies it?
Absolutely. Yes. So we just launched our newest program, Be Kind 365. So this came from a program that we have had called Be Kind 21, which happens every September from the 1st to the 21st, and basically asks people around the world to do 21 acts of kindness, a kind act a day. And this is kind of based on the old adage idea that it can take up to 21 days to create a habit. So this program was met with a lot of feedback saying, why stop at 21 days? Let's make 365 days of this event. And that's basically what we've done. So now we have the Be Kind 365 platform, which is designed to engage, excite, and inspire kindness 24/7, 365 days a year. And it has a variety of digital components, activations, and features. And so this idea with the Be Kind 365 also came about because of the research that was done. So we surveyed over 2,000 young people for the Kindness in Action report. And this found that young people were saying that experiencing some form of kindness would improve their mental health. So this kind of pushed us into really creating this program on a larger scale. And there are all sorts of digital components with this. And you can go to bekind365.world to kind of see all of this in action and play around on the website. And we're just really, really excited about this new program.
That's really interesting. And I just have to say, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist, so I think a lot about the science behind these things. There is a phenomenon called the helper's high. February 17th, I believe, was National Random Acts of Kindness Day. So I was looking a little bit into the research, and we know that not only if you receive kindness, but if you give kindness, both people win and both people get that little boost of feel-good chemicals in their brain. So it's just so reinforcing whether you're being kind or somebody else is being kind to you. It's just a really amazing phenomenon. I love that you have built this initiative around it.
Absolutely. We are so excited.
That's awesome. So I think probably everyone here who's tuned in knows that there is a serious mental health problem going on in our society, and it is especially affecting youth. There's been a dramatic rise in suicide and suicide attempts among many groups of young people. So I wanted to pose a question to the whole panel, really, because I think often that the downside is the crisis part is emphasized, but not the fact that that young people and people are coming together to really try to make a difference. So my question is, what's great about being a young person today, and what's scary? And what do you think are the biggest mental health challenges your generation faces, and what are you bringing to the table to address it? So we can go in whatever order you guys want.
I can start off actually, because I was just thinking about this the other day. when people ask, like, how does it feel to be so young in the mental health space? And I was thinking to myself, like, I'm the oldest I've ever been. Like, I'm 22. So, like, in my perspective, that's like old for me because this is like the most life that I've ever lived. And I find that, being, I guess, a young person, I have, a lot of energy, a lot of zest for life. And I am working towards a future where hopefully my children and grandchildren feel safe to open up about their mental health and not experience the stigma and shame that I did as a young person. And that's a lot of what fuels my passion for activism, just being open, honest, and cultivating those safe and open conversations about mental health. And I guess what feels challenging is, really trying to get older generations to, take a step back and listen to us because, as I've said, I feel like I'm the oldest I've ever been, but, looking at the large scheme of life, like I am only 22 and there are people that have lived double, even triple as long as I have. And I think it's been difficult to navigate that, age dynamic and having older people listen to youth. Like, even though I haven't lived as much life as an old person, it doesn't mean that my experiences aren't valid, or I might have a really good seat at the table and like an idea to propose in mental health. But I think what makes me feel hopeful about the future of, being a young person in this mental health space is having conversations like this and, having older generations listen to us and really help to uplift our voices, which is what I exactly feel like today through having this conversation.
Well, we're really glad to hear the voices, and I want to say I'm the oldest I've ever been right now too. So, Raul, do you want to go next?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much for that question. So, to be very honest, I feel I could answer that question with just one answer, which was just a double-edged sword, which is social media. Right now, it's the best thing and the worst thing too. It's a boon and a bane. So you could use your platform of social media to propagate kindness, to propagate mental health awareness. But so many people right now use it to propagate negativity and create such a bad influence on your daily living. Like for me, I need to think twice before I have to post a picture on Instagram, because what if someone comments something which would particularly affect my mental health? So I feel unsafe just to use social media right now, but I feel that I have the power, right? It's my social media, I can make the change. And we all are doing that right now. So I feel that that is the greatest thing about being a young person, that I could right now use social media as a tool to advocate for mental health. But it's scary that so many people, like it's like one voice against a million, right? But I'm so glad that today I'm sharing this platform with 5 more people who are here fighting that battle. So thank you so much. I mean, it means a lot. So yeah.
Thank you. And Adia, any thoughts you want to add into the mix here?
I love what both of you said, and obviously you're preaching to the choir when we're, in this space, which is so healthy and uplifting. I love being a young person today, and it comes with challenges, but I think when you love something, you want it to be better and you want to help improve it. And I love being in the mental health space, but also I acknowledge the difficulties for youth to really access things like talking about mental health and access things like treatment. Our generation is intrinsically motivated to support ourselves and support one another. And I think that we have taken on a unified collective approach that has just not been seen before in navigating this mental health crisis. We see research informs how when we are in times of crisis, people actually band together. And I think we've seen that. And that doesn't negate the difficulties and the complexities of these times, but it does provide something that's empowering and something that's helping us be equipped to support one another. And I feel uplifted by that. I feel, encouraged by you all, supported by you all. And we do have difficulties in the lens of being quieted and being discouraged from being advocates in society. our age is seen as something that it's weaponized rather than something that can be utilized for change. And often when we talk about the youth mental health crisis, that's being discussed on every level, right? On national levels, local levels, familial levels, really every system is talking about the youth mental health crisis. But we need to really be spotlighting those spaces that are centering youth, because if we're talking about youth, then we should include the individuals that we are saying that we want to support and saying that we want to serve. And so I think in places like the Mental Health Youth Action Forum that we were at recently, Mita and I, and Born This Way Foundation was a part of, and also just inherently being advisors with the Born This Way Foundation, that is really accentuating not only the need for youth to be centered, but also accentuating what a beautiful thing it is when youth are centered and how we can contribute. So I feel so grateful that we're even holding this space right now, because these aren't spaces that we usually are able to hold, and I recognize that.
That's great. Thank you. Neha brought up the idea of how acts of kindness benefit the person giving the kindness as well as the person receiving it. And I think by the same token, working together, peer mutual support, people helping each other, benefits both the receiver and the person receiving. And I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit in the sense of the conscious effort to organize in ways that provide healing, but that also heal the person and nurture the person that's doing the giving. Do you want to take that on, Adia?
Totally. I think that being in the mental health space really provides a manifestation of that, like a physical, tangible manifestation of that I've been able to internalize and really see come to life. I think kindness and vulnerability, as well as authenticity, are contagious, and we know that. And just in the same way that you were talking about kindness being helpful to the giver and the recipient, that is just a beautiful thing. We get to create a world where we are kind, and where not only are we giving that to someone, but we're able to get a byproduct of that kindness. So it's like, obviously that win-win. Who doesn't want that? And I think when it comes to the conscious organization of this all, especially in the mental health space, it is important to acknowledge that we deserve kindness, not only for others, but we deserve it for ourselves. We often see that it's easier to give compassion to others. That's just how it is. And is that okay? Not necessarily. But I think we also need to embrace that kindness for ourselves and self-compassion. And I also think when individuals ask me, so why are you in the mental health space? Why have you been doing this since you were 14? You're 20 now. Is this something that's just hopeless and you feel helpless? And I'm like, no, this is the space where I see love the most. This is the space where I see empathy the most. And really, this is where I see what you're talking about with kindness being exemplified the most. And that is something that's sustainable and it brings longevity. And when we talk about empowerment, which is apparently my theme for the day, that's really what I come back to, of how important it is to be fueled by this kindness, because when you are giving kindness to yourself and to others, it's something that doesn't run out, right? It's just kind of infinite and it's overflowing, and it provides ripples that we might not even see ourselves, but be able to have effects on.
Yeah, I love that you emphasize kindness toward yourself and compassion toward yourself, because I don't think we focus enough on that. It's much easier to talk about helping others, giving to others, being kind to others, being compassionate toward others. And in fact, I work with a lot of teens and young people. I see them as patients. I see them in other ways as well. And a lot of times it's much easier to sit down and say, hey, if your best friend said this to you, what would you tell them? And it can be a lot easier to kind of take on that perspective and say, oh, well, if they said this, I would tell them all these wonderfully supportive things. And then we turn the narrative to, okay, well, what gets in the way of being able to say that to yourself? Let's break it down. Let's start small. Let's kind of build some of that positive self-talk and give yourself some of that kindness and compassion that you're so willing to give other people in your life. And that's just so important. And I hope to see everybody start to focus on that more intentionally. And I think it'll really make a difference.
we've one of the things that I think many of us have noticed is the really enormous difference in the area of stigma, perception of stigma between, say, my generation and yours around mental health. In my generation, it was really not something that was discussed very openly at all, and there was a lot of shame, a lot of hiding, and I think things are different in your generation, which is not to say that there is no more stigma, I'm sure. So I'm interested to see, what you guys are seeing and thinking in terms of the places where stigma still does emerge, and how do you address it? Mira, do you want to give a shot?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to give a little background on myself. I said that I'm from, an Asian Indian family, and we have a really big family, and I was the first person to seek mental health services, and that was not easy because I am the second oldest grandchild, and having my younger cousins say, look up and say, oh, Mita's in therapy, what is wrong? But I really wanted to turn that narrative and say, reaching out to someone for help is a sign of strength. And I really wanted to empower my younger cousins. If you are struggling, there are people out there for you. And I really, really wanted to change the conversation around mental health in my family. And there was a language barrier there because my grandparents moved to this country and English was not their first language. So really, there is actually no word for stigma in Hindi, which is the national language of India. So really trying to describe what I was experiencing, that literal stigma, I had no words to describe it to my grandparents. And I think it's so important when we talk about stigma and mental health, we make that an intersectional conversation, because there is an added component of how does your culture perceive mental health? Not only society, but how does your specific culture? And I think where stigma is still present is definitely in, my culture. I am working to remove that stigma in the Asian Indian community. And I think also mental health is stigmatized in the workplace. It's much easier to say, I have to leave this meeting because I have a physical exam, rather than, oh, I have to leave this meeting early because I have therapy. I think it's just changing that dialogue and making it a fact that 1 in 5 people in America have a mental illness, but 5 in 5 people have a mental health. You don't have to be diagnosed with a mental illness to prioritize your well-being, and everyone is deserving of mental health services. And I think that's where really having these conversations around mental health in the workplace is so important, and just creating a culture that is accepting of everyone's struggles, because oftentimes mental health struggles are invisible. So it's really difficult to see when a person is struggling. And I think one thing that we have all been able to relate to since coming out of the pandemic is our mental health. We all have a mental health, and we've seen so many public figures opening up about their mental health. Naomi Osaka taking a step down and not competing because of her mental well-being. And I think that has caused a positive ripple effect for people to take a look inward and say, what, I have mental health too. And I think I might be feeling depressed, or I might be feeling really anxious. I want to talk to someone about it. And I think that's where a lot of, that power and vulnerability comes in. And through having these conversations and creating a safe space, that's when stigma gets eradicated. And I do want to acknowledge my privileges as being able to seek mental health services, because that's a reality that many Americans don't have. So I think that's when kindness comes into play, really listening and, opening our ears and being here for people, because we never know what someone is going through. And if we can be that one person to support someone that is struggling, that can truly be life-saving. And just, I think if we all just band together, we can really eradicate this stigma, and mental health can be seen as health. It is health. It's not something different. It's fully our health. The the brain is the most complex organ in our body, and I think we deserve to take care of it. You know, it's what makes us us. So I think that hopefully answered the question. I know it's like a nuanced answer, but yeah, that's like where I stand with stigma.
Mina, I think you overshot answering the question and brought up all these other amazing things to dig into. I mean, you brought up this intersectionality between mental health, stigma, and also culture and communities, because stigma towards mental health does not look the same from one culture to another. That's one thing. You also brought up this idea that mental health is something that we all universally have and experience. We all have bodies, we all have brains, we all have health, right? It's something that we all should be investing in, and we call it different things. It might look different from one culture or community or individual to another, but it's important for everybody at the end of the day. And you also really highlighted how your generation is really a generation full of advocates. You're speaking up, you're taking action, you're being voices that previous generations couldn't necessarily find or didn't feel comfortable, speaking up about these topics. Before we dig into some of that, because there's so much here, Adia and Raul, I'd love to hear from you as well. What are your thoughts on where and how stigma shows up and emerges in the world, and how it might differ from culture to culture, and what your experience has been there?
Okay, so I think I'll start. I think like just stemming off from what Mira said right now is that there is this generational trauma, right? Where so many people, like, it's your choice to put your health as a priority. That could be physical, that could be emotional, that could be mental. And that's the basic definition of health. And so many people right now choose to not adapt to that, where they just feel that if it's a physical infliction on my body, then I'm diseased, or then I have a problem and I need to seek help. But if it's something which can't materialize, then why should I? And I feel that is something which it's something which all cultures still believe. And as a youth mental health advocate, I feel like it's our platform. We've been given this platform where we could raise awareness for it. And I'm so glad that at least when it comes to my family, I've seen that change, where my grandfather, he decided that mental health is a priority for this whole family. And he first went at, let's say this is like the early 1900s, okay? He went and he actually started seeking therapy. And this was something which was groundbreaking, because my parents were just like, when it came to my parents, they were like, if you are facing anything, and let's be very honest, I was bullied at school. So at that point, I faced so much of trauma. I was like, I had a place to go and to speak to. My parents were always open. They kept an open and a very safe space to talk about issues, be it anything. And I feel they've changed the paradigm for me, where I was given this platform to speak about it. So I would obviously want to acknowledge that privilege which I have, but I just feel that now I can pass it forward to people who don't have that, especially as a health professional right now working in the healthcare industry. I feel like I could do that for someone else who doesn't have the means to. So yeah.
Thank you both, Mira and Raul, for sharing those very deep and deeply vulnerable and personal experiences. It's just very powerful to hear. And it really comes back to, again, having created or been given the opportunity or privilege to have this platform and use your voice in this way, so that you can help many other people. Adia, anything that you'd add? And wondering what your thoughts are. I know you've shared some about stigma before, and I know you'll have some more to share.
I'd love to add. Yeah, I always have something to share to anything. So I'm like always down for anything in the mental health realm, which I feel like we all are, which is super cool. But I definitely think a lot about cultural stigma as well. I am Middle Eastern. I'm specifically Iranian American, and we have a very collectivistic culture, which I find so healing and so antithetical to the culture of the West that, so heavily often relies on autonomy and self-reliance and not, seeking help for the sake of being independent. But what I love about my culture is that we can really use that collectivist mindset as a tool rather than something that is diminishing the need for seeking support. cultural stigma is huge in the Middle Eastern community. I mean, we are not even given a proper status in the US Census Bureau to where research can be done on the Middle Eastern North African community to talk about where mental health impacts us. And that's getting into a whole other conversation altogether. However, that also plays into stigma as it relates to even discrimination towards our community. But I really think that a huge component of navigating that cultural stigma, especially the stigma of not having willingness to reach out to seek help at the risk of dishonoring your family, comes from wanting to instead use that beauty of the culture and use the values of the culture for good. And I really would like to see stigma being turned in that way, right? So if my family is a huge part of my life because of my culture, and if they are such supportive individuals, then I want to use that for my benefit. I want to share with my family about the work that I'm a part of, because even that starts conversation rather than using that and really holding on to that cultural stigma. But I that we can continue eradicating stigma. I think that we are making incredible progress. I also think that when you are making progress, that shouldn't cause you to be in a space where you are complacent. But I think that we're holding both at once. We're navigating and acknowledging what is hard and what is wrong and what we should fix, but we're also seeing where we can go from here and how we already have made progress. And I try to also hold to that hopeful approach when we are talking about things like stigma.
Adia, this raises another question for me before we switch gears. What is it about your generation that makes it so much more acceptable to talk about these things and be more hopeful and push these conversations forward?
I think that absolutely is a multifaceted question with multifaceted answers. What I have seen is just a willingness to connect and a willingness to be vulnerable, as well as just being fed up. I think what I see is people are done with being inauthentic. They are done with being quote unquote fake. It's exhausting. It is so draining to put on a mask and be someone that you're not. It is so exhausting to be in spaces with people who you're supposed to love and trust and not being able to share about what you're going through. And unfortunately, sometimes it comes to that point where it's even necessitated, you know, when you are in a place of crisis even, or a place where you are realizing you need support, to where you start having these conversations. I believe those conversations should start a lot earlier. They should be really proactive. But I think we're just done with the fake, and we so deeply crave to be human, to be vulnerable, to connect. And even with social media, we've been in a place where we have the most connection you could ever have. Like, someone can call me at any time of day. Someone can DM me at any time of day. People I feel like have access to me, and I feel like I have access to people. Obviously, hopefully not too much. I hope we're all having our boundaries with that. But in a place of such connection, we feel so disconnected and isolated. And we are incentivized by being young people and by wanting to support our own mental health to bridge those gaps and to eliminate those barriers.
Wow. You know, one of the things that strikes me about just your generation and what you're facing, and there are days where it's personally where I sort of wake up in the morning and I'm thinking about mass shootings, and I'm thinking about climate change, and I'm thinking about from the perspective of young people, it must feel really overwhelming at times in ways, you know, that are even more pronounced than for my generation. And I'm thinking about the ways that community can be also healing as we face these really existential kinds of issues. And I'm wondering, you know, how do you think social media and virtual or digital spaces can be emotionally and mentally healthy and can help create community in ways that are, you know, that are supportive, where people feel, instead of feeling judged or feeling self-judging, they feel uplifted. Are there some types of communities virtual communities that do a better job of leaving young people feeling truly connected and in better spirits than when they logged on? What do you think? Mira, any thoughts?
I'm trying to think because yeah, I really want to think about that. I think the power of like being on social media and like connecting with people is that you have the option to like be anonymous, and like people don't have to know like your first name, last name, where you live, your address, where you come from. Like you can literally make an account and like just be in a group, like a group chat with people of like-minded interests, and like you never have to disclose anything about your personal identity. And I think that's like can be a really safe space for people to be open, to be vulnerable, and know that like this information is not going to be used against me. Like, at least for me, whenever like I do public speaking, especially to policymakers and like people in government, like I'm very aware of the fact that like, okay, this is like, I am literally showing my identity, my story. You know, I am saying I am Nita Varma. This is what I look like. This is what I'm saying. And like, there's a sense of like, you know, a lack of privacy there because I am showing up. I am literally showing my face to leaders. And I think with online, there's like a sense of security because you can choose to be anonymous. You don't have to share whatever there's a choice, like, or you can share as much as you want to, or you don't have to share at all. Like you can simply just be part of the conversation by being an observer. And I think that that's what a lot of people take comfort in. They know that like once they are part of a community, they can contribute as much as they want to. At least for me personally, like the most safe spaces I have on social media are those with like people that are of like-minded interest. They are safe, open, validating. They cultivate like a culture that allows us to be super deep and know that like this is a safe space. Like what is said here stays here, and it's never gonna like go out of this group chat, or it's never gonna go out of this FaceTime call or anything. Like Adia and I have become like best friends since the forum and the safe space that we have created with each other. Both of us are in school, but we still know that like when we need to connect with each other online, like it's going to be a safe, private space. And, anything that we say just stays within us. And I think that that's what a lot of young people take comfort in, knowing that there is an online community of people that share their interests or maybe even struggles, and they can all just relate to one another. And knowing that you can literally reach anyone anywhere in the world, it makes you feel less isolated because there is just a plethora of people that you can connect to with the power of social media.
Awesome. Raul, did you have some thoughts on this question as well?
Definitely. I feel like post-pandemic, we all have realized that we could use a tool which is so many apps which have been built during the pandemic. Like I'm a part of so many Discord channels right now, which are peer support groups. So we all just, we meet once a week, okay? And we just talk about how our week was. What were the struggles that we faced? How do we overcome it? And if someone is still having a struggle, then how we as a community can bridge that, and we can all work together to help that person, validate that person's emotions, help them feel better. And I feel like these small reminders, as they've been going on, they keep me going as an individual. And especially the work that even Born This Way Foundation has been doing. It's something which I really personally resonated with. And then I found 31 other people in the advisory board who I felt safe connecting to, who I felt built me up to, right? So that's what I'm telling you. Social media, and especially the way we are going right now, we're trying to build these small, safe communities, and we're trying to bring more and more people. We're trying to be a magnet, just attracting that positivity, spreading it around us. So I just hope that that just keeps going. It's a ripple effect. So as we keep pushing one domino, I just hope that everything just falls in place.
It's a beautiful analogy.
We talked a little bit about about these virtual spaces that people are creating as mutual support systems. And I wonder also, especially as we, hopefully, fingers crossed, are moving out of the pandemic, about the, just physical gathering spaces, like being able to hang out and connect and touch and hug. And I'm wondering how you guys see that as sort of a place of support and healing, and is that starting to happen more? Is that happening? What impact does it have?
I can speak on that and give like my personal experience. I am like a very physical person. I love like giving the people I love hugs. I love just, that physical touch, that sense of like closeness. That is something that is very important to me. And I have found a lot of comfort in physical spaces as well, being able to connect with my friends in real life and just literally sit on the grass in a park and talk. Like that is just one of the most healing things for me. And I think that that is something that has healed a lot of, my struggles with mental health, being able to be so open with people that I trust, that I care about, that I love, and like having that literal physical space. It's just so cathartic and so healing. And that's what was really difficult for me during the pandemic. Like not even being allowed to like hug people, or like that literally not being allowed was something I never would have thought would have been a reality. And, having that been taken away, it made me realize like how much I actually need that. And I think since like hopefully the pandemic is slowly, subsiding, I have definitely found comfort in those physical spaces. I try to see my friends, my family as much as possible and just connect with them and just feel that sense of intimacy and closeness and connectedness and just be here for one another. I think that it is so powerful. And like as humans, we need that connection. And I think physical spaces have that power where, you can read someone's body language, you can like see and vibe off their energy and, be there for them. I think that's something that's really special about physical spaces that, spaces on social media might not have. And for me personally, I prefer the more physical spaces than online spaces. I just haven't been, on things like Discord as much. But I just take a lot of comfort in those physical spaces where I'm able to connect with people in real life. That has been very, very healing to me.
I appreciate your sharing that perspective. It's a refreshing one that we often forget about because of the big shift to technology and going online. But it's important to also remember that physical spaces too have a very different value you can't find anywhere else. So I want to switch gears and bring in a question that was pre-recorded from one of the teen advisory board members at BeMe Health. But I'm going to tell you a quick one-liner of what BeMe is all about, just so you have some context. BeMe is a mobile mental health platform designed for teens by teens and experts. We have everything from science-backed feel-good content to care activities that help you cope with what life throws your way, to live coaching if you need more one-on-one support or need to talk to somebody, to also access to therapy and crisis support. But the best part is we have 100-member teen advisory board that keeps us honest, keeps us real, keeps us relevant, and we would honestly be nowhere without them. So we have, again, this pre-recorded question from Jordan Miller, one of our teen advisors, questions for any of you today who want to chime in.
Hi, my name is Jordan Miller, and I'm a teen advisory board member at BeMe Health. When it comes to mental health, I'm interested in how life experiences affect mental health and how it can be treated. I'm interested in how digital apps and technologies affect mental health and how our environments affect our mental health in general.
Could you all hear the question? Awesome.
So Jordan asks how technology and digital tools and also our environments affect our mental health.
I can speak on this. I'm so happy we were able to see like the video of someone asking. I think that was really cool. It's nice to put a face to the name or face to the question, I guess. I really think that these digital platforms, such as social media, obviously there are many forms of media, but we highlight social media, knowing that youth use that so much for information, for connection. Any digital platform and any platform of any kind can really be used either for the betterment of society, the betterment of the self, or harm. And I don't know if there's much of a neutral space there. I really view it as more of black and white in that way. Of course, everything is nuanced, but in terms of platforms, they can really be used for good or for harm. And I think that starts with introspection. When we think about, okay, how does technology affect mental health? How does social media affect mental health? I think that really begins with reflecting and introspecting. Okay, how do I use my platforms? What do I use them for? What am I trying to communicate? Who am I trying to communicate them with? And how does what I'm consuming affect me? Interesting case here because I went like 4 years without social media, just decided it was not for me. It was not going to be healthy for me. Not that it's healthy or that it's not, but just that it wasn't healthy for me. And I decided to get on social media again near the White House Mental Health Action Forum. And I made a conscious decision that really what I was going to post and put out was going to be a reflection of my values and what I want people to know about me, and also a space and a platform for mental health advocacy. And everyone has their passions and what they want to share. Everyone wants to share what they care about. And I really hope that people do that and also do that in safe ways and thinking consciously. Mindfulness is everything, right? In every aspect of our lives. How am I being mindful about what I consume, the people I'm following, right? That can really affect one's mental health. Sometimes you need to just go through that following list and unfollow some people that, or some organizations or companies that are just not going to be healthy for you. I I noticed recently that I just follow so many mental health organizations. And I was like, wow, this is great, because I'm going through my feed and I get a reminder, you matter. And then I go through another one and mental health matters, and then another one, and it's just great. And I think that sometimes we just have to know what supports us, what hurts us, and how can we individually and in relative personal ways decide what works for us in bettering our mental health when we are acknowledging of what supports us and what does not.
I love that, because we can't change everything in the world around us or in our environment, but there are things that we can control and shape. And I love that you highlighted what some of those things are in our day-to-day. Let's bring in one more question from a BeMe Health teen advisor. This is Blair Franciscus with a question for us.
Hi, my name is Blair Franciscus. I'm a teen advisory board member at BeMe Health, and when it comes to mental health, I'm interested in how technology can help promote mental health. At BeMe, there's an app experience that's designed to let you be your authentic self and learn how to be self-compassionate or talk to someone for more support. My question for the youth advisors is this: when and where do you feel like you can be your authentic self? And how do you think social media can help teens be their authentic self?
Raul, do you want to
Yeah.
give that one a shot?
Yep, sure. So I think I'm my most authentic self when I start writing, when I put like pen to paper. And I love blogging. I keep writing most of the time. And it started when I was facing a few mental health issues due to the bullying, due to my previous trauma. And I started writing. It was very cathartic for me. And I wanted a platform which other people could resonate to. And I used channel kindness to be that platform. And when I started submitting my work, and when people read it, they realized I was being my true authentic self. And they reached out to me through channel kindness, and they started talking about their own issues. I found a safe haven, you could say, where people resonated with whatever I wrote, and they felt that they were not in this alone. And that's what I feel at a certain point. We all just need to talk about our issues in a way which is mindful to ourselves and to other people too. So it's your time, it's your pace. No one's asking you to rush it. Whenever you feel ready or whenever you want to, at that point you could. And that's what I feel. At a certain point, if you want to bridge yourself or just form a wall against the hatred of this world, you can do that. So go for it. It's at your own time and pace is all I would say. So I feel that being authentically me has really helped me reach out to other people. And I've formed this community right now, which I feel very safe to be myself. So yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. I love, as a writer, I love that you can, that you feel like you can be your most authentic self in writing, and that's a great way for you to communicate. Mira, you were part of the White House Action Forum and are now studying social welfare policy. So how active are young people today in these issues? Actually, I know the answer to that. It's very active. But what are they accomplishing, and how can people get more involved? And we've talked about this theme a little bit already, but talk to me more about the healing that comes from being involved in doing this kind of work and having, sort of being mission driven in your work and your life.
Yes, I love that question, Rob, because mental health policy is something so deeply personal to me. Actually, right after the youth forum, I came back home and I went to my Board of Education in my hometown of Burbank, and I spoke to the leaders of Board of Education, and I demanded that they print the suicide hotline on the back of all of the student ID cards within the district, because that was something that wasn't done. And I believe that it was super important because, suicide is a leading cause of death for individuals 15 to 25. And every student in the district has an ID card. And by, flipping that ID card over and knowing that there's a number that is there for you, a 3-digit number, 988, there can be so much power and comfort in knowing that, I am not alone. And that is something that I could have used when I was a high school student. But I think what motivates me is, through literally sharing my story and pouring my heart out to these board members and saying, like, I am a living, breathing example of why calling 988 was life-saving for me. And through having those board members see a physical, like, tangible person that benefited from calling 988, like, that's what kind of changed, like, that perspective in their mind, like, okay, maybe we should do this. And since then, I've been successful in having my school district print the hotline. And also at UCLA students, including myself, were successful in having our ID cards have the hotline on the back as well. And I think something that motivates me is knowing that my voice is my power, and I have the power to create that change. And for those students that, are struggling with their mental health, knowing that they can take comfort in having that hotline on the back, that there's someone there for them at all times listening, that is something that just motivates me to continue to advocate for mental health policy. And at least for me in my program, I want to study macro social welfare. So really go into the specific mental health policy. And one of the questions in the chat was, what do you need from policymakers? And I think what I most need as someone that advocates for policy is for people to just listen. I want people to acknowledge that they are in positions of power as policymakers and know that the decisions that they make impact, their constituents, their citizens. And I really just need them to open up their ears and know that, like, this is something that is deeply personal, and it can be personal to them as well. Suicide is, as I've said, the leading cause of death, and everyone is affected by it, whether we like it or not. And I think that what helped me most as a policy, activist is for these people in positions of power to really listen to the youth, because we are fighting for our future and for a better future where, youth don't have to worry about feeling like a burden, knowing that there are people that are there for them. Their people in government are backing them up. They are representing them truly and fully. I think that is what is most needed. And that's where I find a lot of that, intrinsic motivation to continue to share my story to those people in power to cultivate that systemic change.
Awesome. One thing our mental health system generally does not do a very good job of is providing appropriate support and making people from different racial, ethnic, and gender identities feel welcome. I'm wondering, how can we ensure that mental health resources, in your view, are accessible and inclusive for all? And maybe some of that is in the policy realm. So continue on with that thought.
Yeah. As I've said before, there was a huge language barrier in my family when communicating mental health. What I would do is I would literally show my grandparents TED Ed videos about like, what is depression? What is anxiety? How does psychiatric medication work? And I would change the subtitles to Hindi so then they can read it. And hearing them, like seeing them hear the video in their native language, that was a game changer for them because it felt like there was someone from their culture speaking to them. And I think mental health education is crucial in this country, and we need to make that culturally competent. There needs to be, people from different ethnicities and backgrounds that are sharing, their experiences, if they feel comfortable, of course, sharing their experiences and really empowering people from their specific culture to get that help. And I think that's what makes something like this so powerful, knowing that Raul, Adia, and myself are from, cultures that are so different than what is seen in America. Like we are minority groups in America. And I think that there's a lot of power there in having, mental health activism and advocacy be intersectional, having many cultures feel welcomed and heard. And I think with mental health education, we just need to have different people advising on, how can this relate to my specific culture? How can we translate this curriculum into as many languages as possible? Can we get interpreters? Can we have people go to specific resources for their ethnic group so they don't feel, isolated from the conversation? I think it's really important that we are all part of that movement. And I think by being part of this conversation today, we are making that conversation around mental health culturally competent and intersectional. And hopefully, as we move forward as a society, we can continue to listen to the stories of marginalized people and uplift their stories, because their stories matter and their stories are valid. And again, we all have a mental health regardless of our background, and that, deserves to be acknowledged and seen and heard.
Great. We have one other question from a listener, which is, what is the best way for organizations to share mental health resources with teens? For example, via social media, presentations at school, or some other way? Anyone want to quickly take that on? And then we'll go to Neha to talk a little bit about mental health literacy.
I can speak on that. I am a strong believer that when it comes to resourcing individuals, that we need to meet them where they're at, especially if there are power dynamics that are different, right? So if someone is part of an organization that is established versus kind of a youth member of the community that might be an individual, sometimes that can be really overwhelming for an individual to go out of their way, especially if they're affected by mental health issues, and seek out those resources. And it doesn't mean that we should dissuade people from doing that, but it does mean that we should meet people where they're at. And so I do think that when it comes to, in organizations, the mental health organizations that are at the forefront in the mental health space right now are doing this beautifully. So I have to say that. But really meeting youth where they're at, and that includes social media. That's where youth are. That's what youth are using. Making sure that accessibility is there, inclusivity is there, making sure that resources are relevant to youth so that youth are like, oh, that actually makes sense because that relates to me. And there isn't some big academic or adult or generational disconnect here. And you were even talking about educational presentations. So many of our incredible mental health nonprofits are doing things like educational presentations and are going to those communities, are doing collaborations. And at the center of it, I hope that we continue pushing meeting people where they're at rather than seeking spaces where individuals who are struggling are just expected to reach out and find the support that they need.
And part of that is promoting mental health literacy, or giving people the language to label, identify, recognize how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and then communicate it. Thank you all so much. This is such a rich conversation. I know we could talk about this for hours, but I really appreciate your opening up and advocating in the way that you did.
Okay, so do you want to say a little bit about mental health literacy, Neha? And I think we could take a couple minutes and then we'll close it out.
Well, so if we have time for one more, I wanted to hear from all of you today. I mean, what do you think that teens need to know in the early years? What can we do at school? What can we do at home to kind of give young people the language to start learning and talking about their mental health?
Something that would have helped me, because I'm looking retrospectively, I knew that I was struggling with my mental health when I was around 10 or 11. And I think something I would want to tell youth is that it's not just puberty, it's not just hormones. Don't let anyone dismiss your mental health struggles as, oh, puberty, or you're already going through so many hormonal changes. It's just that, because I experienced that. And I said that to myself too, like, oh, I'm just going through puberty. Like I'm not actually depressed. I'm not actually anxious, but I would want you to know that your feelings are valid. And if you don't have the words to articulate it, that does not make it less valid. And there is a great, sense of strength and, power in opening up to someone that you trust. So one thing I would want to say to youth is, really try to find someone in your life that you feel comfortable talking to about your well-being, because it is so important. Do not let that go unignored. Don't let that go ignored. You deserve to talk about it, even if you don't have the words to express it. You can, like, one thing that I would say to my mom when I was younger is like, I'm feeling not like myself. Like, I don't feel like I'm Mira. Like, I feel like I'm pretending to be me. I don't know what's going on. And then through that, we fostered conversations around well-being. And, she said, like, is there someone you want to talk to? Maybe like a therapist or something. And like, that's how the conversation started in my family. And initially, I was really scared too, but then I realized, like, I'm my best self-advocate, and so are you. To anyone that is struggling out there, please remember that there are people that are here for you and that care for you and that want to listen to you. And do not invalidate what you're going through. And, I think, like, we all deserve to have someone in our life that makes us feel loved and supported and cared for. And if you have a person in your life that you trust to talk about what you're going through, please do not feel ashamed to, because, it can totally be life-changing.
And I can hop in here too and just go off Mira. You like hit everything on the head here. And that is basically why we created the Be There certificate. Sometimes it's really hard to know how to have those conversations, or how to even know when the time is to have those conversations. And so we created the Be There certificate with our friends in Canada, jack.org, to basically have this free online mental health resource to teach people, okay, how do I say things? Who should I be talking to? How do I talk to my friend, to my parent, to, whomever? And so this is a course in English, French, and Spanish, completely free. And it basically teaches you these 5 golden rules and provides really simple, actionable steps on how to recognize when someone is struggling and understand their role in supporting that person, and basically learn how to connect them with whatever help they need. And so we really worked on this with young people, trying to find a way and a resource to communicate exactly what Mira is saying, like, how do we create something that doesn't really seem like it has been created to kind of be that bridge when we don't know what to say. And so just wanted to put that in there. There is more at betherecertificate.org, but such a good point, Mira. So just wanted to add that.
Awesome. Well, that's a fantastic point, and thank you all so much for making time. We're pretty much out of time here, so I want to really thank all 4 of you and you, Neha, for joining us today and being part of this conversation. I'll just say a couple words about MindSite News in closing. We're the only national journalism site in the country dedicated solely to reporting on mental health. We're nonprofit and we depend on our readers and our supporters to keep us going. We do investigative reporting, solutions-focused reporting. We write about youth issues and arts and culture. We do live events like this one. We also provide a free daily newsletter. And you can support us by going to our website, mindsitenews.org. There's a donate button at the top of the page that'll help us build our capacity to do more reporting on youth mental health. You can also sign up for our newsletter there. And that's it. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Fantastic conversation. And we'll be making some of this conversation available on social media in edited forms and to be continued. Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.